The final film in the Heaven's Feel trilogy, visual spectacle with a beautiful soundtrack to accompany it. And though it was able to bring a climactic ending which brought this 14-year story to an end, there was a lot left unanswered. Hopefully this video can ease some of your confusion or give better context to certain scenes. Let's start with a question that many were confused with. What exactly happened in the ending? Ilia used the third magic, Heaven's Feel, to materialize Shiro's soul into a container. That container is later found by Ryder, and Rin and Sakura bring it to a mage, Toko Aozaki, from Karo no Kyokai. This mage specializes in creating realistic dolls. Shiro's soul was transplanted into the doll and took his form. That might seem a bit weird how a soul can make a doll look like a living person, but there is a reason for this. Somebody's soul is a blueprint for their existence. The soul determines their personality, appearance, etc. This is how Zoken continued his life for over 200 years. As you know, Zoken's magic has to do with crustworms, so how does he continually keep coming back after death, as we see multiple times throughout this trilogy? As he used his magecraft, he decided to turn his body into worms in order to expand his life. In one of those worms, he embedded his soul. However, his body deteriorates at a rate much faster than normal humans, where his body can only live a set amount of years. The only way to counteract this is to feed on others and use them to create an entirely new body. Mato Zoken was once known as Makiri Zolgan before he moved to Japan. His wish for the Grail started with the sacrifice of Justice von Einsburn, his beloved. He cannot stand to see her sacrifice be in vain, so he vowed to live long enough to see the Grail open and reach the root. As years passed, and with his body in a constant state of deterioration, it took a mental toll on Zoken. Through countless sacrifices to extend his lifespan, he had forgotten his original intention. What was once a dream to avenge his beloved, turned to an obsession for immortality. Another thing that wasn't explained very well was Archer's arm. What did this mean? How did this work? Why is this dangerous? While it was made to help Shiro continue living, it has a dangerous caveat. The cloth wrapped around his arm is the Shroud of Martin, which stops the effects of the arm unless it is removed. If the shroud is removed, with Shiro's current body not being capable of handling something of that power, Archer's memories and being will start to overwrite him. Every time he uses the arm, while he can gain the strength of Archer, he is assailed with unbearable pain to both his body and mind, where in the end he can barely stay conscious unless he completely focuses on maintaining his consciousness. And if you're wondering why Shiro has blades coming out of him in the final battle, that is because of him overusing Archer's arm and UBW activating inside of him of sorts. While the anime tells what the Zelrach sword is, it doesn't clarify what it's capable of. The Zelrach sword is a mystic code that is quite unbelievable. It is capable of producing the second magic or accessing parallel worlds. What the sword does is drain the area of mana from a parallel world and can fire it into a concentrated attack. Since there's an infinite amount of parallel worlds, there can be a constant stream of highly concentrated mana. The Dress of Heaven is the outfit you see Ilia wear at the end of the film. It is an Einsburn mystic code that helps give more control over the Grail, which led Ilia to stop the Grail before the situation got worse. At the end of the Fourth Grail War, Kirei was shot in the heart by Emiya Kiritsugu. As this was happening, the curse of Angra Mainyu engulfed Kirei. Due to his nature, he was accepted and was given the chance to continue life by giving him a replacement heart. This was why Zabanya was ineffective against him. The reason he came back after having his heart stopped by Sakura is a bit unclear to my knowledge. If I'm wrong, please correct me. I used bits of information to come up with a scenario, but this isn't confirmed. When he gained his replacement heart, he was put into a contract with Angra. After his heart was stopped, not gone, Kirei was able to use healing magic that we see him use multiple times throughout the series to keep himself alive. After Sakura's contract ended with Angra, Angra used the last connection he had, which was Kirei. He then called upon Kirei, who was barely hanging onto life by a thread. This next segment will be about altered and cut content, so if you plan to read the visual novel and want to find out for yourself what was changed, I recommend skipping here. The beginning was pretty similar to the visual novel, with some scenes shortened a bit. The one major thing to cut, however, was Shinji's backstory, and while you could probably be able to guess why he ended up like the asshole he is, it's always good for confirmation. Throughout his early childhood, Shinji always thought he was the one to take the heir. He knew he didn't have latent mage talent, but that didn't stop his determination. However, that stone wall of perseverance soon toppled onto itself when it turned out his spot has already been claimed. One day he entered the basement of the mansion and witnessed something that was supposed to be hidden from him. His adopted sister Sakura was receiving Zoken's treatment to be a Mato mage. The honor of being the Mato head was no longer to be laid upon him. With the combination of his shock of being cast away as an outsider and constantly tormented by Zoken, he became the person he is in Stay Night. Various changes were made to speed things up, such as cut or shortened conversations. These didn't change the story, but had some slight characterization for Kirei. When they arrive at the Einsbarren Forest, this changes slightly. Instead of driving himself, he arranges a driver to take them. On the way there in the anime, they have a talk about Kiritsugu, while in the visual novel, this talk happened days before. When they get out, Kotomine gives Shiro a black key, one of his weapons. Then is multiple cut monologues and conversations between Kotomine and Shiro within the forest. There's a cutscene with Sakura in the castle detailing the pain she is going through due to the shadow, while Assassin and Zoken observe her. They also further explain how the Grail and vessels work. Ilia then gets rescued and the chase begins. The chase is significantly shorter. Kirei's fight with Assassin and Zoken is a bit more detailed in how and why things turned out. I do think the way the anime implemented his backstory was done a bit better. The visual novel had it after the fight, while the anime had it during, and it blended in seamlessly. The Berserker fight was pretty similar. The anime added 2 extra segments, one with Shiro catching up and surpassing Archer, and a small look into Hercules' legend. A lot of the context of what was happening didn't make it in, however. For example, what 9 Lives Blade Works is and the toll the arm was taking on Shiro. After Kirei's fight with Sakura, the scene plays out similarly, but gives a lot more characterization with Sakura with the condition she is in. After the fight with Berserker, instead of Shiro passing out, he is still conscious and makes it home. The state his mind is in is documented in way greater detail. Rin's pendant has had 2 different meanings between the mediums. In the anime, it is more of a callback to show how much he cares about this jewel that saved his life. But in the visual novel, not only is it something he cherishes, it is what's going to push him forward from that point on. At this moment, Shiro can barely maintain his consciousness. He kept the pendant close, and whenever he would begin to doze off, he would dig it into his skin. The Angara Mainyu explanation plays out a lot longer. With this scene, Ilia also explains how the Holy Grail and the Holy Grail War really works in extreme detail. The next scene that is cut out happens later in the night, before the projection of the Jewel Sword. In this scene, Sakura gives Shiro and Rin an option to leave so they don't have to be hurt when Angara is born. It also shows more of Sakura's and Rin's relationship with one another, as well as both Sakura and Shiro's thoughts on the situation. Afterwards, the group proceeds to construct the gem sword. This is one scene where the anime is superior in my opinion. Instead of showing an image of Justice like in the visual novel, it fully shows and details the events leading up to the creation of the Holy Grail War. The next couple scenes play out similarly until we get to Sakura's perspective in the cave. In the visual novel, there's more context given to what Assassin's wish and motivations were. A conversation between Shiro and Ilia that was cut out from the second film comes back to some degree. Before they leave for Ryudo Temple, Shiro asks Ilia to come live with them after the war is over. In the visual novel, this happens days before. The next major change is within the fight of Rider vs. Saber Alter. With Saber's death, Shiro had a monologue showcasing the guilt he has over killing someone dear to him. When Shiro goes to rescue Sakura, it plays out pretty similarly, except the anime goes for this more grand and climactic tone. The fight between Sakura and Rin is slightly different. In the visual novel, Rin fights off against shadow giants, but in the anime, the shadows take many different forms. The small shadow that appears in the anime is not present in the visual novel. The final fight with Kirei is a lot longer, characterizes Kirei, and gives so much more context on the situation of both combatants. After the fight, Shiro is at his limits and his mind starts to break. His mind is completely destroyed, which is why when Ilia appears, he can't recall her name until it's too late. The ending is a lot more detailed. It thoroughly explains a lot more after the Grail War. The anime shows its own thing of Shiro getting a body, while in the visual novel, Rin explains her time in London and the consequences she had to face. The rest plays out slightly differently, but nothing major to the story or characters. Those were some of the basics of many unanswered questions and some of the cut content from the third movie that I hope I was able to explain effectively. The things I explained were summarized versions of said explanations, so if you want more detail, there's the Fate Wiki or the visual novel. There is most likely a lot more stuff I missed, and if there is something you are still not sure about, just ask in the comments. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Later.